Hey everyone, it's Pauline from Chronically Spicy. I have mast cell activation syndrome, latex allergy, coconut allergy, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, or hypermobile spectrum disorder. I guess that right now is kind of dependent on the source because they're essentially the same thing. It's just so yeah, depending on the source. Right now, that's kind of up in the air. And I do believe new research has come out saying that they're just going to classify them as the same. Anyway, that's connected to what I'm going to talk about real quick here, because there's something that is known as the trifecta in the MCAS, EDS, and POTS community, post-tachycardia syndrome, which is exactly the trifecta. That's the group that shows up to the party. You invited one person to your wedding, and they showed up with two friends, and you weren't planning on paying for those plates because you actually paid for good food. They're the party crashers. You get one, you're more likely to have one or both of the other. I have mast cell and the hypermobility issue, and other comorbidities and other unrelated allergies that are anaphylactic. And my daughter, who is 17, has mast cell activation, POTS, EDS, fibro, and chronic fatigue. And I did not do a very good job of not passing on the bad genes. So let's just say that me and my teenage copy paste for me are basically, I'm not going to speak over the medical experts. I'm just going to give my personal opinion. There's a lot of genetics involved here, okay? Because I baked this 17-year-old in, the proverbial oven for 9 months straight, was sicker than anything the entire time, hospitalized 3 times with hyperemesis gravidarum, ended up on bed rest at 5 months. Then at the very end of the pregnancy, about 2 weeks before she was, about 4 weeks before she was due, I was put, my blood pressure just started skyrocketing. It had been 120/70 the entire time, like my entire life. And then last 4 weeks, it was like, no, we're going to make things dangerous now. And I had no concept of the importance of blood pressure at the time. So I did what I was supposed to. I went in every single day to see the nurse practitioner. I'm sorry, the midwife that was treating me under the guidance of a doctor, and I got my blood pressure checked every single day, and literally 8 days before she would have been considered full term at 36 weeks. Whatever the full term was 17 years ago, okay? Because I know it's changed. But she was technically a preemie by 24 hours because I had to have an emergency induction because my blood pressure shot up to 200/100. And I knew something was wrong when I saw the midwife's face. And she's like, I have to go talk to the doctor. I'll be right back. And I was like, oh, that's never happened before. Something's not good here. And I was right. I was sent to have an emergency induction the next morning, and I had to do it with no pain meds. So there was no epidural involved because, surprise, surprise, mast cell activation patients do not often respond well to, not often, but there are cases for mast cell activation syndrome, MCAS, where you either don't respond well to anesthesia, or it makes you very sick and you have a reaction. It can vary. But long story short, she came out with almost everything that I have. There's only one difference on our on our diagnostic lists from the Mayo Clinic. She has POTS. I have Behçet's disease. It's an autoimmune condition that I will be discussing later with more detail. All right, let's get to sharing the screen so that we can talk a little bit about these articles here. All right, so first we're going to look at mast cell activation syndrome, diagnosing MCAS. And this is from Mast Cell Action. There is a TMS Society for a Cure, tmsforacure.org. That's a U.S. Education and awareness organization. And they have a lot of great info on their page too, including a page, a printout that you can fill with take to your doctor's office and have your doctor fill it out so that you can keep it with you at all times in an accessible place, possibly with your EpiPens, so that emergency personnel knows what is safe for you, because we can react to anything and everything at any given time, including medications or the added inactive ingredients, the derivatives, the excipients, and we may or may not actually have allergies to any of these things. Our body just thinks that we do. So yeah, getting diagnosed does matter, no matter what other creators may say. And when I say that, I mean everyone from personal coaches and consultants, whatever, who are selling courses. I'm not knocking that, because honestly, it's one of my goals, but I'm just saying, anyone who says, and this goes from personal coaches all the way up to functional medicine doctors, who happen to be chiropractors, and according to my research, their functional medicine certifications are only legally allowed to be applied to within the scope of the practice or the specialty with which they came into the functional medicine certification program with. And I'm not naming names right now. I did another short video on this on TikTok a few days ago that got a little more specific, but last time I checked, chiropractors should, you go to a chiropractor if you yank your back, if you let your back goes out, you need a readjustment for your spine. Or like me, you fall down the stairs, land on your butt so hard that you actually dislocate the bone, that your tailbone, and then you have to go have an emergency visit with the chiropractor so they can get that bad boy back in there. And let me tell you, that's a special kind of hell. All right. Mast cell activation syndrome, diagnosing MCAS. Diagnosing MCAS requires a systemic, stepwise approach, which means that it can take a considerable amount of time for individuals to receive a formal diagnosis of MCAS. That's super important to know, because I don't want people to think that you're going to walk into your doctor's office the first day with all of the published, medical journals, all of the information, pictures. I'm not talking about me. I heard this from a friend. Pictures of every reaction that you ever, that's overloading the memory on your 1 terabyte iPhone, because you got to keep them there for the next doctor. And I went in with everything thinking, and I went in during like a full major flare, covered head to toe, hives, welts, swelling, facial flushing. I was actually tested for lupus 5 times because of the facial flushing, because they thought that the allergist I was seeing at the time thought that it looked a lot like lupus, and that came back clean, or not positive. I didn't pop positive for lupus. And I'll take a look in a second, because I think I'm waiting for your next part of your comment. But if anybody who's just joining now, if you'd like to, please hop over to YouTube if you have a YouTube account, and I am live streaming on YouTube so you can read along with me. All right, diagnosing MCAS. All right, so formal, that's the key word here, is formal diagnosis of MCAS. But I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm not telling you who you should or shouldn't see, or who should or should not manage your care. I'm just telling you that I think it's extremely important for MCAS patients to arm themselves with all the knowledge that they need, because a lot of the times doctors don't have it right. And I mean, I'm hearing from way too many MCAS patients who aren't prescribed epinephrine, and who are not, who are just prescribed, or told to take an OTC H1 instead of H1s and H2s. Again, not medical advice. This is just kind of standard practice for mast cell activation patients, kind of like across the board. H1s are antihistamines. H2s are the beta blockers, the like acid blocker, like Pepsid, right? And I take a crazy amount of Pepsid every day, famotidine, because it's a prescribed kind, 40 milligrams twice a day. That's what I take every day. Diagnosing MCAS. All right. Key steps in diagnosis for MCAS include recognizing clinical symptoms. Super important. Okay. Super important. And that's because if your doctor has dismissed an MCAS diagnosis for you based on what is known as, hey, I can't say that. Well, you know what I mean. Hi.
I want what?
Well, I mean, I can say it, but like,
is it still on screen?
Yeah, she's right there.
Just a second. Got it.
I love how proper and like just snappy it is. Yes. Whomst. If you had an S, that would have been hysterical. All right. Yeah, YouTube, I'm talking to TikTok, and TikTok, I'm working on YouTube right now. All right. So I'm in my ADHD glory because I am not medicated right now. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. I'm also super keyed up because my mast cells aren't stable. I'm rationing my meds, and I've had probably 5 low-grade anaphylactic reactions in the past 5 days, one a day, that Mayo Clinic would have had me epi for, but yeah, I'm having issues with my doctor and a prescription right now, so I'm looking for a different provider. Anyway, so clinical symptoms, huge, because that's how I was first diagnosed. Because tryptase testing, a lot of doctors are like, well, your tryptase is normal, because tryptase is one of the mediators that are produced by mast cells and released into the system, and they think that you have to have elevated tryptase in order to qualify for a mast cell activation and diagnosis. That is not true. And I don't care who I'm speaking over on that one, because I'm basing all of what I'm sharing on the research I've done with information from Dr. Lawrence Afrin, a leading MCAS world-renowned expert, and sources that I could take to any editor that I've written for or will write for in the future, and I could actually use that for, as a background source, and then find an actual doctor to hold. My allergic shiners look like that's really bad. Okay. Key steps in. Okay, here we go. So after the treatment, clinical symptoms, right? Investigating response to treatment. That means, do you actually improve on H1s and H2s? Do you improve on mast cell stabilizers like cromolyn sodium or ketotifen? Do you improve when you follow a low, because not every MCAS patient is affected by histamines. My daughter is lucky. She can eat anything she wants as long as we're managing everything and she's taking the meds she should, right? I, however, can take 2 sips of coffee or any tea, and high EpiPen. Oh, and kombucha hates me. It really, honestly, it tried to off me a couple times. So not going there. Also treatment, because diet is always part of the treatment plan for a lot. Well, not always, but for the majority of medical conditions out there. There's at least something that it's going to be recommended that be changed, no matter how minor that may be. But just so you know, because people have asked, what do people need to avoid if they have mast cell activation syndrome? For food, right? Again, not medical advice, just sharing my personal and research here. But those foods can include, and this is not a complete list. Wow. Those foods can include anything aged, pickled, dehydrated, slow cooked, fermented, processed, or cured. And if it contains natural flavors, that's always suspect because you don't know what's in there. And that could possibly trigger a mast cell activation syndrome response, histamine response. Also, tea, certain kinds of tea. Green tea is kind of one of the contested ones because some people with MCAS, it like actually helps, and others, it like me, no, can't do that. Not, I even tried loose leaf, not happening. 2 sips in, I react like instantly. Within 5 minutes, I know that I need to rescue med. So yeah, and then let's see, foods, ground beef, anything actually ground meats, period, are super high in histamine. And I see you, Zaha. So welcome to the party nobody wanted an invitation to. Hopefully those of us who are already here and a few drinks in can help you on your journey, just with sharing our experiences. There are a number of chronic illness advocates that I can work on another video that I would recommend you follow. But right now, I would recommend Chronically Ill and Hot. And I'm not sure if Mast Cell Action has a TikTok page, but I would follow them or just check out the website. All right, so get this in one sentence here. Key steps in diagnosing MCAS include recognizing clinical symptoms, investigating response to treatment, which includes medicine and diet, undertaking mediator tests, and ruling out other diagnoses. I've said before, mast cell activation syndrome is a diagnosis of exclusion. You are not going to get an MCAS diagnosis on the first day, on the first appointment. MCAS is a separate condition from mastocytosis. Mastocytosis is the most severe version or mast cell activation disorder. MCAS is like, we're somewhere in the middle, but there's also differentiating ranges of severity for patients. I mean, my daughter and I are a perfect example. I was where she is now at her age. So that says a lot, right? All right. So sometimes not all these steps can be taken in these cases. People are typically diagnosed with suspected MCAS. In the U.S., this is just my personal opinion. I have not spoken with any medical professionals or scientific or medical journal editors or anything to verify this, but my suspicion is that the U.S. equivalent of this, because Mast Cell Action, I believe, is based in the U.K., idiopathic anaphylaxis sound familiar to anybody? Because and we'll get to this, but mast cell activation syndrome and idiopathic anaphylaxis, well, anaphylaxis means two or more body systems, and idiopathic in medical speak means we don't know what causes it or why it happens or when it's going to happen, which is basically the T-shirt I should be wearing. Like hey, I'm with MCAS, and I got a shirt that says MCAS on it. So all of those steps, but here we have more information. If a person fulfills each of these 4 sets of criteria, a confident MCAS diagnosis can be provided. Frequently, this process requires a trial and error approach. 1 second, I'm about to have to. 1 minute. Okay, my screen just went white. Okay, or not white, but dark. Okay, it's better now. So, frequently, this process requires a trial and error approach, and people often wait a long time for a definitive diagnosis. It took me 15 years to get diagnosed. Okay. The undertaking the uncertainty of the situation can be very difficult for people who suspect that they have MCAS but have not had their condition diagnosed. Short story, spoiler alert, I have medical PTSD from all the medical gaslighting along the way, formally diagnosed, by the way. Zara, I completely understand. And thank you for tagging a friend. So if you would like to access more information related to MCAS diagnosis, you can see the diagnostic support section of the resources for medical professionals page, as well as MCAS bibliography. All right, I'm going to open up that link. 1 minute. Diagnosing MCAS. 1 second. I am rescue medicating because my tongue just went dry. And I'm taking what I can take because I have to ration my prescription for EpiPens, and I don't know if the next reaction is going to be worse. So I have to make sure that I have it in case the zombies do show up or the mothership decides to land like tomorrow morning, right? I'm not recommending that. First line treatment for anaphylaxis is always epinephrine, but I'm doing what I have to do because of the situation that I'm in. I am not recommending that anybody not follow the doctor's orders. Make sure you set up a rescue plan with your doctor, okay? So the stepwise approach, we read that part. So let's see here. Let's find it. 1 minute. Is that the one I'm going for? No, over here. All right, so now I'm going to tell you that tryptase is, I already mentioned this once, but tryptase is usually the one that doctors are like, yeah, so if your tryptase levels are normal, then you don't have mast cell activation syndrome. I had a dermatologist who completely dismissed my MCAS, even though I came in with full and obvious, like kids pointing at me on the street, asking what was wrong with my face because I wasn't just swollen. I had like welts and hives, full body everywhere. And I actually there's a story in my writing portfolio in which passersby who, with good intentions, called the subway police down to help me because they thought that I was, when I was visiting a friend in New York, because they thought that I was trying to escape a DV situation with my child because that's how bad I looked. All right. But yeah, just completely dismissed my my MCAS diagnosis, and that is not responsible because according to multiple sources I've checked, only about 30% of patients with MCAS actually show elevated levels of tryptase in their systems, in their blood testing, even during a flare. And just to take that one step further, I've had people in my comment section tell me that even two, I've had two, because I remember this specifically on different videos, flat out tell me that they have mastocytosis, systemic mastocytosis, and they aren't affected by histamines. 15% of, I think it's about 15% of the population of mastocytosis who, tryptase, don't show elevated tryptase in their testing. So like, and that's the only thing doctors are looking at. A lot of doctors are looking at. We can go into the functional medicine, heal your gut whackery later, because MCAS can't be cured because it's chronic illness. But, just thought I'd throw that out there. All right. So we also have from the NIH, diagnosis, classification, and management of mast cell activation syndrome in personalized medicine. Let's see. It's according to NIH, MCAS is seen in a variety of clinical contexts and pathologies, including IgE dependent allergic inflammation, other immunologic and inflammatory reactions, primary mast cell disorders, and hereditary alpha tryptosemia, HAT, HAT. So it can be passed on, right? And then there are other mediators that can be looked for that doctors don't know about. Long story, super short, that I'm actually going to keep short. I got clinically diagnosed based on Dr. Afrin's consensus 2, which I will read in a minute. Shush. I got clinically diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome by a nurse practitioner about 2 years ago. Even though I'd been on all the mast cell stabilizing medications prescribed by my primary care, who said, yeah, I think you have it, but I'm not going to diagnose it. It has to come from, an allergist or another doctor who is licensed to prescribe medication, another provider who is licensed to prescribe medication. She said that specifically because my first diagnosis of MCAS, the very first one, was from a functional medicine doctor that couldn't prescribe, and she was like, I'm not putting that in your chart. So, and then I got diagnosed again and confirmed by the Mayo Clinic this past summer because apparently elevated leukotriene levels are also a mast cell activation marker. So, but you don't have to actually have any of those markers because MCAS is a spectrum and appears differently for a lot of us. So, thank you for the gift. I appreciate you. Let's see. So I will make sure I link this one in there. Now, I want you to know in severe systemic reactions, MCAS is demonstrable by a substantial increase of tryptase levels above the individual's baseline. Okay. I wish they rephrased that to add the word some, because again, 30% is not the majority of the population of MCAS patients. 70% is. That means 70% of us are actually being missed, ignored, and that's why we're waiting, 7 to 15 years to get diagnosed from like when we were triggered with the condition. Usually there's some kind of trauma involved or an infection, an illness. That's why it was connected with, that's why it's been connected to, and there's multiple studies on this with COVID and long COVID. And it's also it's just, mine was pregnancy. I was relatively normal-ish until I got pregnant, and then everything went downhill. But she was worth it. So that's where we are. Anyway, so yeah, I wish they fixed that, but we'll take what we can get. In addition, the symptoms are recurrent, involve more than one organ system, and are responsive to therapy with with MCAS stabilizing or mediator targeting drugs. Medications, shall we say, for consensus criteria for the diagnosis of MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, to be met. All right. Now, let me see if I have to translate any of this here. So no, you don't always have to have elevated tryptase or respond to. No, you do not always have to have elevated tryptase. Yes, symptoms need to be recurrent because one-off is like a Christmas special. Like it doesn't mean that you actually, if you're not like responding to varying triggers, and even if you can't pinpoint what they are, because with MCAS they can change. Your safe foods list can change from day to day or hour to hour. So yeah, it has to happen more than once, and has to involve more than one organ system. Guess what? Also has to involve more than one organ system. Anaphylaxis, and it doesn't have to actually include your airway or your blood pressure dropping. If you get to that part, that's anaphylactic shock and should already be in the back of a wee-woo van on the way to the hospital or already in the ER, because that's when the clock is like ticking big time, okay, on making sure they get you stable. Now, understand, there's idiopathic MCAS, there's hereditary MCAS. There are a variety of different categories that patients can fall into. So make sure if you're curious, you can take a look at the NIH article that, if I don't already have it in the description box, I will add it. Now here, I'm going to share a tab for people on TikTok, for my TikTok friends. There is I just Googled MCAS consensus 2. Okay. And I found an episode of the POTS cast, episode 129, Mast Cell Matters, in which they interviewed Dr. Lawrence Afrin, a leading hematologist and MCAS expert. He has a book called Never Bet Against Occam. I haven't read it. I'm going to get it on my Audible so I can listen to it when I'm walking. So in consensus 2, because I don't want to play, you know what? We're going to play just a tiny bit of this.
Welcome to the Standing Up to POTS podcast, otherwise known as the POTS cast. This podcast is dedicated to educating and empowering the community about postural orthostatic tech.
Go a little bit further here. Let's see if we can get to that.
For
Here we go.
The development of an independent center for
1 second.
renamed the Consensus 2 criteria.
Okay.
So we're going to dive in. And Dr. Afrin, you, along with me and something like 38 other of our colleagues, published a peer-reviewed article called The Diagnosis of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, a Global Consensus 2. And so I was hoping we can talk a little more about that.
All right. So Dr. Afrin goes into great detail in this podcast and in multiple pieces you can find written online, and other guest interviews on different podcasts, in which he describes consensus to basically all the people who fall through the cracks and don't fit consensus 1 criteria, which is the elevated tryptase and all the 4 that were mentioned by the Mast Cell Action and NCI, the NIH article that I read, in which your tryptase has to be elevated. You have to have a significant increase in quality of life with MCAS stabilization and H1 and H2 mediators. And the other 2 criteria that they had listed too. But the most important part there that gets most people bumped to the it's all on your head phase from doctors, because that's not a happy place to be for any of us, and why a lot of us end up with something with PTSD and like white coat syndrome. Dr. Afrin was like, well, I'm seeing way too many patients who have all the symptoms, and they're responding to, the H1s and the H2s and the chromolan sodium or the getadofen or other mast cell activation mast cell stabilizers. And they had a significant improvement when they went low histamine, when they dropped aged foods, pickled foods, fermented foods, dehydrated foods, slow cooked foods, cured foods, processed foods, et cetera, et cetera. And just so you know, not everybody reacts to the same things. So there you go. 1 second. You guys. Hey, so Evie, I'm trying to work right now. Okay? Evie, it's not him. And he's allowed to walk in, so you don't need to bark. All right, so the podcast episode is already linked in the description box, so you can watch the whole thing or listen to the whole thing. But Dr. Afrin and what they said, 30-something colleagues all got together, joined forces, and published a paper called Mast Cell Consensus 2. And that was essentially, hey, look, all of these people are showing symptoms of, but they're not fitting the criteria for what consensus one, what has now been dubbed, or since this paper was published, dubbed consensus one, for the formal diagnostic. MCAS consensus 2 is more the clinical, which could lead to, and this is actually, it's hard to say this because, yeah, we're over diagnosing what is considered a rare disease. But yeah, this, I think the consensus 2 can become problematic, because that's where you have like functional medicine doctors who are telling you that you can cure your MCAS, or, and personal coaches who might be telling you can cure your MCAS, actually cure it, or live a symptom-free life. I want them to tell me the numbers for the next lottery ticket that I should buy, because if they can predict that you're never going to have another flare again, and actually be right, then I'd love for them to be buying picking up my lotto numbers, because MCAS is a chronic illness, and there you go. Exactly. There is no cure. Right as of right now, there is no cure. There is research being done, but there is no cure. And if in your doctor or your medical provider might not know about consensus 2. So that's why you need to actually, it's basically do all the work to earn like yourself an imaginary medical degree. Because if your doctor, and I didn't know this at the beginning, that's why I'm so adamant about making sure I try to educate with my personal experience, because if I had known that tryptase wasn't going to actually matter in the majority of cases, I wouldn't have fought for multiple tryptase tests even when I was flaring, because I tried to time the appointments with my allergist and my dermatologist while I was flaring. And I had my dermatologist telling me, well, your skin biopsies don't show elevated mast cells. Well, guess what? That's because I don't have cutaneous mastocytosis. I have mast cell activation syndrome. That's what I am. Okay. But my doctor, I'm like, I know I do. I know. I'm like, I know I have this. Nothing else fits. And I ran all the differentials. I looked up I looked up everything. First, I was like, it might just be histamine intolerance. No, because histamine intolerance is usually a slow buildup over a couple of days with varying multiple triggers. And by the time you react 2 to 3 days later, you don't know what actually set you off. Mast cell activation syndrome is more often a fast and hard surprise. You're having an allergic reaction, and that's the one that gets you or sometimes earns you the EpiPens, or most often. I actually hope that if you have MCAS and you're watching this, that you already have an EpiPen prescription. If not, please talk to your doctor or whichever medical provider is treating you for mast cell activation. Look up Dr. Lawrence Afrin, look up mast cell action, click the links in the description box, print out what you need to print, and take it to your doctor. So like, why do you need an EpiPen? You don't have any actual allergies, because that's very common for mast cell activation syndrome. Your body reacts as if there's an actual forest fire. Actually, and there is a forest fire. But the doctors aren't going to diagnose you unless they know if it was figuratively. Here's an analogy. The doctors want to know before they diagnose you if it was arson or if it was an accidental grease fire in the kitchen. And you're like, I don't care what caused it. I want this fixed because I'm having anaphylactic reactions to, I don't even know anymore. I can't drink coffee. Nothing is safe. What I ate yesterday, slow cooked pork is making me projectile vomit. I have, you know what I'm saying? Like, when beef jerky becomes your enemy, there's a problem, especially when it's homemade. So look up consensus 2 if you are either new to MCAS, suspect you have MCAS, and are trying to get diagnosed, and or if you've been medically gaslit and or dismissed by current providers. And also you can check out local Facebook groups. Each state usually has one. and you can try and find a provider that takes your insurance and is mast cell aware. Auden says, and if you have an anaphylaxis in a safe setting with bloodstream drawn, I wish they did it overnight. Autumn, we'll get to that in just 1 minute, okay? Because according to TMS for Cure.org, skin testing and patch testing, not considered safe from multiple sources, and multiple long-time MCAS patients who are involved with these organizations have shared with me based on a lot of research, because we can react to anything and everything at any given time, and that includes patch testing. And then here's the problem. You could go into anaphylaxis literally you're in the office and have multiple reactions over the 3 to 5 days or whatever you have to keep the patches on your back, if it's like that standard prick test. And then everything comes back negative. And then your doctor's like, well, obviously, I don't know what it is. Obviously, you're not allergic to anything. So have you considered depression medication? Do you think it might be anxiety? Maybe if you lost weight and exercised more, try some yoga, that kind of thing. Because I've had all of that thrown at me. All right. Let me see here. So let's go to consensus 2. 1 second. Actually, by the way, there's a cat. There's a woman, an owner of a cat. I forget the cat's name, and so I don't know his account. But if you look up cat and MCAS or mast cell and EDS or whatever, there's this gorgeous cat on. They've got a TikTok account. The cat has EDS and mast cell, and has to wear sweatshirts and clothes, like basically because it helps to keep his like joints and messed up skin healthier. So yeah. All right, we're going to look at management for mast cell action, and I will add this to the description box because it's not currently in there, I don't think. Now, no, this is going to be different for pretty much every person on the planet. Sorry, my tongue is dry, which is a sign of anaphylaxis, of an allergic reaction, and it's a sign of anaphylaxis, potential anaphylaxis if it appears with another body system affected. So that's my salivary glands, and I am nice and, well, not nice because I didn't ask for it, but I'm puffy as all get out right now. So I'm swelling, this happens every day. That's why this shouldn't be normal to any of us. This shouldn't be normal to any of us. That it shouldn't be. And I do wish testing, like if they want to blood test you for food allergies or different allergies itself, that obviously the tryptase and leukotriene are going to be blood draws, but I myself don't allow any skin testing unless it's like actually medically necessary, in the sense that I'm scheduled for a recommended or a necessary procedure that is planned for, and not something that's I ended up in the emergency room via ambulance. I'm unconscious and there's no time to test anything. But if I want to plan for an upper endoscopy, for example, which terrifies the absolute crap out of me, because the last time I did that 7 years ago, I think, my airway slammed shut the moment they put the medical lubricant on the medically lubricated scope down my throat, esophagus. My airway slammed shut, so they had to immediately take it out, and initiate measures to reopen my airways so that and I woke up 15 minutes later and they were like, yeah, come back in 2 weeks. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Thanks. All right. So here we go. This is self-management is the first thing listed for reducing the severity of symptoms, which is the goal for mast cell patients. Okay. Because we can't cure what we have. We can reduce the severity of our symptoms. Some of us can actually go into a form of remission where we have the doctors nailed it. You're on the right meds. You figured out your triggers to a point, and that what to avoid for the majority of the time. You only get surprised here and there, and you can exercise without having a histamine dump that knocks you on your bottom for the next 3 days. And you don't wake up with anaphylaxis because you're PMSing or react to your daughter's hormones with anaphylaxis, or her reacting to yours with what I'm beginning to suspect is also anaphylaxis. You want to improve your quality of life. Okay. And the first thing that you can do, and this is, I'm going to share this. There you go. Sharing the right tab now. So the first thing listed is self-management. I had to do this for the 6 years before I got diagnosed, after I figured out what I already have. Zara lives off of brown rice. I have food allergies. So do I, Zara. I'm allergic to latex. Most of the latex fruit syndrome was coconut, all coconut derivatives. And I'm allergic to the latex, and latex plants. So I'm allergic to, it would make me allergic to mulberry, the rubber tree, of course, any ficus tree, because ficus trees are in the rubber tree. The rubber tree is a ficus tree, and poinsettias. And Easter lilies too, I think. And the what's the name of that flower? Crocus flower. The crocus flower, because that's in the Easter lily family, and one of the medications that I was prescribed or recommended for another condition I have that's autoimmune by my Mayo Clinic team is actually derived from the crocus flower. So I had to go back to them and be like, yeah, I can't take that. That comes from a latex containing plant. And they were like, oh, okay, then yeah, that's not going to work. So I had to get my meds compounded, which a lot of MCAS patients actually do end up having to get certain medications compounded. So I started self-managing my suspected and completely medically gaslit, it's all in your head, physical symptoms that were visible to other people on my own, and huge improvement with reducing and removing as many histamine triggering foods as I possibly could, on top of figuring out which foods I'm allergic to, and which foods I'm not, within the latex and coconut allergies, because that's a whole another mess of its own. So if individuals have been able to identify specific triggers, for example, specific foods or chemicals, exercise or stress, these triggers should be avoided as much as possible to prevent a reaction. I want somebody to please right now tell me, please, what is the magic, what's the secret password for the avoiding stress when you have a reaction, when you have a chronic illness, and you're looking at EpiPens every day just because, well, I have no idea what set me off, but I have two body systems affected again. MCAS, honestly, it breaks down if you combine the MCAS diagnostic requirement of 2 or more organ systems with, and then compare that to the definition of idiopathic anaphylaxis or anaphylaxis itself. It becomes redundant. And so there you go. There's a lot of stress involved. A lot of patients with mast cell activation syndrome we have food phobias because, well, you couldn't pay me enough to try drinking kombucha again. But there are plenty of other foods that I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing that, because I had a bad enough reaction, before or the last time I ate it. So self-management can include adopting a low histamine diet. Controlling blood sugar fluctuations also can be beneficial. This is why, and I'm not giving medical advice, I'm just sharing personal experience. Every single time you eat, it doesn't matter if it's low histamine or not. It doesn't matter if it's, you like the blushing that's going? That's great. But it doesn't matter if it's low histamine. It doesn't matter if it's high histamine. It doesn't matter if it's processed. It doesn't matter if it's something you made from scratch yourself from the vegetables you grew in your garden with your organic fertilizer and, washed with vinegar and let dry or just wash with water because vinegar is high in histamine. Like every single time you eat or drink something that triggers an insulin response, your body also has a histamine release. I know this from experience because we have figured out, and again, not medical advice, talk to your doctor, do your own research. You can look up Dr. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. He's the author of the Obesity Code and other books on intermittent fasting, which he has helped with just countless people reverse their type 2 diabetes and or insulin resistance, and in turn also minimize or lessen the severity of chronic illnesses that they may be dealing with. By the way, histamines are stored in our fat cells. So the more fat cells we have, I understand that there are a lot of MCAS patients who are underweight and undernourished. So this is by no means an all or nothing. However, histamines are stored in our fat cells, and we all have fat cells, no matter how tiny we may be. So the more histamine, the more fluff there is. I'm fluffy, so I'm not judging anybody. I'm working on losing weight for two reasons. One, they're both medical. One is because it'll help reduce the pressure on my joints with my hypermobility issues. And two, I'll be carrying around less histamine in my body, which means that when I react, it won't be as bad. I'll still react, but it won't be as often or as bad. All right. Some people may need to explore a combination of diets depending on their specific triggers. And if this is complicated, seeking help from either a dietitian or nutritionist with knowledge of MCAS can be helpful. Make sure it is a medical provider who understands and knows MCAS. Because if it's not, and they tell you that, bone broth is going to, heal your gut, you might be able to handle bone broth. It might send you into anaphylaxis. It literally is a flip of the coin, and you don't know until you try. I don't do any broth. I don't make myself, because I found a quick and easy meat only broth, safe meat only broth, like kind of safe for you, not safe for me. Is that right? That I make in 20 minutes on my slow cooker. And there you go. All right. Actually, 1 minute. All right. Then there's medical management. Stop it. Quiet. You guys are Evie. Hi. You stop? Okay. So medical management, and that's going to obviously be the prescription medication portion of this, and the expert, guidance from your doctor. Medications, the goal is to find the right mast cell stabilizer for you to restore stability to the mast cell and reduce its reactivity to different triggers, and mediator blockers like H1s and H2s. And again, those are antihistamines and like Pepcid or famotidine. Due to the variation in triggers, mediator release, and symptoms across individuals with MCAS, a medical treatment that works for one person may not work for another, and the response to treatment is not always predictable. Note a few things that I've learned from personal experience. One, every time you're started on a new prescription or try a new prescription or a new medication, it's safest, and this is a topic that's usually discussed in the MCAS community amongst patients, but I've also seen it in medical literature, that you start the new medication like cromolyn sodium or ketotifen at the lowest possible dose. So instead of using the whole vial that you put in your water, the little ampule, you start with a quarter of it. If you're using quercetin to help stabilize your mast cells, which you can get, over the counter or on Amazon or whatever, that helps some people. It triggers other people. It does nothing for other people. Ketotifen, same thing. But whichever medication that they put you on, or if you're going through like the list and they're trying to, well, that one triggered me, so let's try this instead. It's always best to first try, not medical advice, talk to your doctor. I had to always make sure that I was started at the lowest dose. And two, even if starting at the lowest dose didn't work, we would then look at the ingredients. Make sure that there weren't any actual allergens in them. And then we went back again and started from the beginning and tried every medication compounded. And then we finally found, and in other forms too. And then we finally found what worked for me. And that's a whole other slightly controversial topic. But my mast cell stabilizer, I will just say this, is managed by I have a med manager for my mast cell activation stabilizer, the one that I have to use, have to administer multiple times daily, twice daily. And I say one for rescue as my prescription. I'm just in between providers, so to speak. So I have to wait. I'm only taking one when I have a reaction, as opposed to taking two every day and being stable. So I'm chasing the forest fire. All right. So anyway, an added complication for the treatment of MCAS arises from the possibility that some medications or the additives or preservatives can be triggered for MCAS, and this may cause an adverse reaction to a medication. Doesn't always mean you're allergic to it, though. I saw a piece in which Dr. Afrin was quoted as saying in his entire career, he's only ever actually seen 2 patients who are actually allergic to Benadryl. The rest were actually reacting to the excipients, the added ingredients, and they were okay once they were put on compounded form. Note, compounded medication is usually depending on your insurance, it's going to be pricier than what you get at the regular pharmacies, but compounding pharmacies are not mandated to have certain prices because they're usually independent. All right, so there's a trial and error approach for medication, but that's under careful guidance from your medical provider. And eventually you can find the right medical process and management system, because it can often involve multiple medications and or supplements. So let's see. I'm going to look here on this page for mast cell medications commonly used to treat MCAS. All right, let's do the Cliff Notes version of that. I think you have to have been in high school in the 90s to actually know what that means. 1990s, by the way. Yeah, okay. All right, so medicines, histamine blockers like H1s and H2s. You were prescribed for histamines. Okay, I take 2. But I'm also allergic to a lot of histamines. I'm allergic to anything that isn't in the Gen 1 family, which includes Benadryl and loratadine are the 2 that I know I can take. There's one more I think I can take, but I have to look that one up because I can't remember. I have really weird and obscure allergies, and I annoy myself. Okay. So medications, H1s and H2s. Okay. They affect they mitigate the effects of histamines produced by mast cells. Some medications will manage the effects of other mediators released from mast cells, like Monteculast, which is singular, which I know has a black box warning on it. But my daughter's been on it since she was 2, and it is her most important mast cell stabilizer. Hi, there goes copy paste. I actually had her first pediatrician when she was 9, when he moved to Minnesota, just after like 2 months of treating her, actually accidentally diagnosed her, and none of us knew it, when she was 9, because the exact words out of her mouth were, make sure that she always has her singular, because that is her most important that's her most important stabilizer. Okay. So yeah, that's a big deal. Finding the right one that works for you, and the right form of the medication, because maybe the capsule form doesn't work. Maybe you have to have liquid, or maybe you have to have one that you're trained to self-administer in other ways, or maybe it has to be compounded. All of these things are things you need to talk to and work out with your doctor, and figure out what does not trigger you and helps to improve your quality of life. Okay. And by reducing your symptoms. Mast cell stabilizers can help prevent mediator release, including ketotifen and sodium chromoglate. I wonder if that's the English version of the word cromolyn. Or cromolyn, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Both of these can be prescribed in various forms, including capsules and eye drops. Fun note, I'm allergic to all eye drops too. Yeah, we'll have to. If I'm not allergic to it, it has high histamines. And if it doesn't have high histamines, it has coconut in it. And if it doesn't have that, I'm allergic to it because it's latex cross. So like, I'm paying for something that I did horribly in my past life, and I'd like to apologize, like right now. Your insurance told you that insurance never cover compounded. Mine did. Mine didn't cover, but it reduced the price. I will tell you that my compounded diphenhydramine, again, which I know is a touchy subject for a lot of people, because it's recently been it's been in the news cycle for quite a while, and it pops up every now and then, that the association with taking it regularly and increased risk of dementia. But let me tell you, my goal is to actually become old enough to actually develop or be able to develop dementia and survive today. And I'm allergic to everything else, literally. I can show you the blood tests, and the doctor's like, no, because of one specific thing. Two things. I have four main allergens, and 2 of them make me allergic to like 90% of medications. So yeah, I have no choice with that. Ketotifen is over $100 a month for me. Yeah, the Benadryl that I was on, Cynthia, the capsules, it was a 90-day supply, but it was also like $175 a bottle. And if I got every medication that I needed compounded, it would have been like $500 a month for everything with insurance, because insurance did knock the price down, but my insurance didn't cover like all of it. So we went with the absolutely necessary medications for compounding, and I just either didn't take, or I was able to figure out that I could actually tolerate a few OTC versions. Yeah, that's when you have to kind of like lesser of 2 evils and go with what you can afford, and figure out your medication budget, right? Wow. Yeah. Figure out your medication budget, and then whatever you can allot to the medications that need to be compounded, figure out which ones are the most important for you. For me, that would be, the mast cell stabilizers, because if I'm stable, then I don't have to chase, mother of God. Sorry, I just dropped my phone. Because if my mast cells are stable, I'm not chasing the reactions. with EpiPens and everything else, and hoping that I put out the forest fire in time before it becomes, a more severe reaction. Sorry, 1 second. I think that almost broke. It just died anyway, so that's fine. The battery that I was using. Sorry. There we go. All right. So yeah, figure out what is most important for you, and then you go over and you go with that. Ketotifen, I haven't tried yet. I would like to, but my doctor wants me to get certain blood markers for other things that they were looking at, like in normal levels, before we do that, because apparently it can have some effect on your kidneys. So there's also bioflavonoids such as quercetin and luteolin, Luteolin, and vitamin C and D can also act as mast cell stabilizers. Okay. And I know that quercetin, vitamin C, and D can be purchased over the counter. Don't make any changes to your medications or supplements without speaking with your doctor first, of course. But I have to look up at the luteolin because that one I haven't seen for a while, so I forgot about that. In mastocytosis, more than MCAS, antibody therapies, which act as mast cell inhibitors that stop the excessive production of mast cells, can also be useful. Medications to support the immune system, like corticosteroids and immunosuppressants, may also be prescribed in mastocytosis patients more often than MCAS to help reduce inflammation and reduce immune system activity. And emergency medications include adrenaline, which is used to treat anaphylaxis, so epinephrine, because this is a UK-based site. So when they're talking about corticosteroids, for example, when I was doing research on something else, they advise that every mast cell patient, this might have been research for latex allergy. Either way, we have allergic reactions, anaphylaxis, we get to the same place, right? So they recommended for all patients with, this specific diagnosis that I was researching at the time, that leads to anaphylaxis, to keep an epinephrine pen, a corticosteroid, and an antihistamine in your emergency med kit that you should carry at all times. So there's that. So I will leave that page open for you to read on the YouTube channel on this video, Managing MCAS. I will have that linked in the description box. Okay. So let's see. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to scroll through the chat here on TikTok real quick. Auden, I don't know if you're still here, but I'm responding to your comment in which you stated that and if you wish that they were able to do all the testing in a 24-hour period in a safe place, with blood tests being drawn, etc. So if you have an anaphylactic reaction, you're in a safe place already. Yeah, that, especially if they're sticking to blood draws and not skin testing, or actual hey, eat this and see if it doesn't make you explode into a giant allergic rash, or anything else like that, because of histamines and whatever. I totally would not have a problem with that. And it's getting worse, but that's fun. Let's see. Auden also said IgE allergens came back negative. And yep, and that's because in the majority of cases, mast cell activation patients might have the normal allergies that a lot of people have, hay fever during high pollen season and stuff, wherever you may live. Or maybe you're allergic to grass, or you're allergic to a birch tree, or things like that. And the pollen from that specific food or whatever sets off like just sneezing fits and stuff. But when it comes to like actual mass, like anaphylactic type allergic reactions, that's why skin testing is so problematic, because one, it's unreliable. It gets it wrong the 70% of the time for MCAS patients. And it can also actually put our lives in danger, because you can go from anaphylaxis to anaphylactic shock like that, or you can just drop and go straight to anaphylactic shock, depending on how unstable or stable your system may be at the time. So I personally avoid anything that's like physical contact with me for testing as much as I can. And I've actually been kicked out of doctors' practices for refusing to stop taking my H1s and my H2s before seeing them for any skin testing that I did allow. Because I was like, look, it's either I take my medication or I end up going to the ER before I see you. So this is my baseline when I'm on. You want me at baseline, like a normal person without MCAS would be reacting, to get tested, right? And if I come in when I'm bad, it's not going to be, it's going to be EpiPen and IV adrenaline. It's going to be a Benadryl drip. IV and like rescue that you're looking at. So, and let's see, Zara says she lives off brown rice. I understand there are so many of us have been eating either, the one or two foods are like, some people are down to one or two foods. Some people are on TPN because they can't handle solid food anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of variation, and I know that I can have more freedom with my dietary choices 2 weeks out of the month, and those are not the weeks that my daughter's PMSing or I am PMSing, because those weeks I'm reacting to just existing. Quite literally, seriously, I woke up. I am, therefore I am allergic. Where's my EpiPen? So yeah. If you have any questions on YouTube, let me know. Let's see, making sure I didn't miss anything else. For antihistamines for Zahira. I'm saying it, Zahira. I'm saying it wrong. I'm sorry. My insurance. Okay, so let's see. Yeah. Okay, so compounded medication. Commenting on that because one of my chat members on TikTok said that insurance and pharmacy told her that insurance never ever covers compounded medications. That's going to depend on the insurance you have and the medication being prescribed. Sometimes it might just be, and I'm not going to, I know it's a lot of work for doctors, so the just shouldn't be there. But sometimes it might be the extra work of the doctor going above and beyond and writing a prior authorization, like on a regular basis, whatever schedule the insurance company sets up for you. But most definitely, you have to see what you can work on within your budget. And the compounding pharmacy I used to work with in Minnesota last 2 years ago, they always gave me the price, or I asked for the price before they filled the prescription for me, because there were no automatic refills. With compounded medication, every single time you call in for a refill, they go over, or they're supposed to go over your allergen list with you to make sure that, or a trigger list to make sure nothing's changed, to make sure that they have the right formulation, the right kind of capsule for you, the right kind of filler for you, be it rice powder or cornstarch, or I can't remember what the other option is, but I think those are the two that I remember that I could do. And yeah, there were a few where the insurance was like, yeah, we can't do anything with that. So, but it depended on the medication. So, see if you can see if you need it. See if you can call your insurance company and ask if they have a specialty pharmacy department. That's the bat line essentially for bigger insurance companies who have patients, covered under their programs, like us, who are medically, complex, shall we say, and they might be able to provide a little more guidance. It's basically the medical version of or equivalent to want to speak to your supervisor if you're having a problem with, phone customer service for a company or whatever, for like returning items or something. I don't know if every insurance company has a specialty pharmacy department, but if they do, you most likely would find that information one of two ways. This is what I would do. I would search insurance name, specialty pharmacy department, see if they have one, and see if it does the same thing, because they might have it under a different name. Or you could always just call the main line that you usually call and ask if it's possible to speak with a supervisor or someone who in the up the ladder in the chain of command, who may have more flexibility and leeway in or knowledge in what they can do to help you manage your condition. Okay. When it comes to coverage for those kinds of medications. Christmas may have to ask more. Liza may have to ask more questions at pharmacy then. Yeah, I gotcha. I may have to ask more questions at the pharmacy then. Yes, we definitely need to make sure that we are advocating for ourselves and staying aware, because a lot of the times we're the ones living in these bodies, and a lot of us have to manage literally what could turn into a life-threatening situation. Every time we have anaphylaxis, it could become anaphylactic shock. You don't know. Yeah, I most definitely think that you need to be aware. And if your doctor's not listening to you, or is doing anything or prescribing anything or refusing to prescribe standard MCAS stabilizers or EpiPens, etc., then sorry about that. Then it might be time to search for another physician that is MCAS aware and will advocate for you, and because they're supposed to be on your team, and their goal is to help you. So being dismissed is doing the exact opposite. Yeah, there you go. All right. So I know that I have in the YouTube, just because TikTok doesn't allow for clickable links. So I always try to, that's why I do the double live stream, phone, TikTok, laptop for YouTube streaming. And I have to stream. It has to be live streamed, and I have to be recorded, because I have to pay for a monthly membership in order to be able to pre-record videos, which I can't afford to do until I have more supporters. So this is my invite to you. If you're interested and I'm able to help you in any way, or you found, that something I have, that my videos have been informative and helpful to you already, I welcome you to check out. I will add my Linktree by a link, my Linktree link in the description box. My Patreon and everything else are in there. Or if you want to subscribe to TikTok, we can do private chats, etc., etc. And we can get into more personal, maybe more sensitive topics that might otherwise be things we can't discuss in public based on, platform rules. So I invite you to please like, comment, and share. and subscribe, because the more you help me build community and awareness, the more people know. The more people who can advocate for themselves and keep themselves safe and know when to walk away when it's the wrong doctor who is suggesting things that are dangerous, or know when to question a doctor. If a doctor's like, yeah, tryptase, and you're like, yeah, well, only in 30% of cases. Here's the PubMed article. You can actually literally, there's the Hypermobile CPT, follow her. She has multiple TikTok videos on the medical actual like phone book thick, like 1980s phone book thick binder that she created herself with every single time the doctor said something, said, well, this to her. And she's like, well, actually, she goes home and she finds the articles, like peer-reviewed articles, and prints them out and puts them in her binder and organizes them by section, I think. And she's able to like, well, according to this study, doc, when she goes back, and this one's peer-reviewed, and here's, the NIH or PubMed or whatever. So can we revisit this topic and see if you're willing to work with me on this? Because if not, then I need to find a different provider who will. And by the way, if anybody tells you you're doctor shopping when you're trying to, one, stay alive, and two, have some quality of life while you're doing it, you're not doctor shopping. You are advocating for yourself. You're advocating for yourself, okay? And you deserve to be heard, and you deserve to, have a doctor who's on your side. Understand one thing though, okay? It might not be mast cell activation syndrome. You might have actual allergies yet you're not aware of. You might have a severe case of histamine intolerance. It could be lupus, the medical joke on house, right? It's always lupus. That's why it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So I was always prepared. I always try to phrase it this way with doctors. And what I would say to them if it was a new doctor that I was getting good vibes from and they weren't gaslighting me, it was, look, I have read everything there is and nothing else explains the constellation of symptoms that I have and the pattern in which they appear and when I have them. I literally have done the differential work and eliminated, based on my research, and I have not found anything else that explains all of this. I was even tested for alpha-gal, the red meat allergy, the mammalian meat allergy you can get from a tick bite, because one of my first signs was projectile vomiting after eating slow-cooked pork. Turns out, guess what? I'm not allergic to it. It's just high in histamines, and it was being slow cooked. So like, hey, double histamines, So it trial and error. Advocate for yourself. Stay aware as possible. If you come across an article that you don't, or a peer-reviewed medical source for anything that you might need help translating, message me. I'll leave a comment on a YouTube video. Let me know. And maybe it's something that we can, I can read. Or if you're my Patreon, you can send me a direct message and we can have a private one-on-one chat that nobody else sees. Because I know some topics are extremely sensitive and things that we want to keep personal. So I am good to go. I'm heading out because I want to get dinner going, and my daughter and I are going to work on her homeschool lessons for the evening because we basically do night school for homeschool. And that's what works for us. So thank you very much for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe, and advocate, spread awareness, because mast cell activation syndrome awareness can help you save lives and can help you possibly shave years off of the time or the average that it takes to get diagnosed. And who doesn't want to get better faster. All right, I'm out. Have a good night, and please make sure to sub and follow YouTube, TikTok. I've got a Facebook page too that I sometimes remember to use. And I will see you in the next live. If you have any suggestions for topics you want covered, again, leave a comment and let me know. Have a good night and stay safe.